finally got you on the other side of the seat of the interview process. I don't know how you do it, man. You've been interviewing everyone, and it's been amazing. I've been trying to catch glimpses of it live when I can, and when I can't, I go back and try to catch up. And it's hard to, but slowly but surely, I'm glad that you have it on your page, so I can scroll down and I'm able to catch different voices, and everyone's got a different story, and so every interview's been like amazing, and I want to thank you for it, and I want to thank you for doing this because it's especially right now with being locked up and quarantined and just not being able to go out and have that space to share community with other authors. It's difficult, but this has been also a kind of blessing for people that want to know about their favorite author or someone that they've heard of. They've gotten a glimpse of them, a piece of them through this because they have the time right now to be able to sit down and open up, whereas at another time they would have been too busy, they would have been working, they would have been out there performing, they would have been out there writing and doing whatever they do as busy poets, as busy writers, busy artists that they are. So you, you, I don't know if you planned it, but you nailed it, and you knew, and you jumped on the opportunity to sit with voices from all over, and give us their like an in depth of a little bit of them, some human side of them, some professional side of them, things that we usually wonder. You know what I mean? So I'm hoping to capture that in this interview with you, this platica, this sit down, this get down. And so hopefully the people that have been watching you will get to also enjoy knowing more about the guy, on the doing, asking all the questions. So because people I'm sure wonder, well, who's this guy, who's interviewing everybody every, hour on the hour, who doesn't sleep, who's just like, you're like a madman, but hey, it's something, it's great work. I wish there was a way for you to make money off of this. I don't know, man. I was thinking, man, you should put up some sort of like a Venmo, donations wanted, or something for the DOS Center, to help with this because it's amazing. It's amazing. But um, let's start off. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Edward Vidaurre. I live in McAllen, Texas. I am a poet. I am also the editor and publisher of Flower Song Press, who was fortunate enough to come across your manuscript, "Mowing Leaves of Grass," which we'll be talking about today. And I've been following you for since way before that manuscript even came through my desk. I've been listening to you. I watched YouTube videos of you, and I was like, man, this guy's. At first I was like, this is the kind of passion that we need. This is the kind of the right anger when it comes to poetry that's needed. But at the time, also when I was following you at the beginning, I thought of you more as a performance poet, slam poet, and I had never seen slam poetry or performance poetry on a page, and so for me it was more like catching a rock star. I got to catch this guy, live and in concert, wherever he performs. I've got to find him. So you know but all that's changed, and I didn't think it would become that. I didn't think it was going to change. when I became a publisher, I thought, I publish poets, page poets, and stuff like that. And surprisingly, I've published, you know several poets that are, performance poets. You and Eddie Vega, and I could even add Daniel Garcia Ordaz to that list, because you've got to catch him, you know reciting his poetry live, to really catch the essence that's on that page, just like yours. And so, you know so that's what happened with, Flower Song Press, and myself, and publishing you. I didn't think I was taking a chance. I knew, right away, that were um you were it. You were it. And we'll go down to different. I'll ask you a few questions, but I've tried to describe, and I'm trying to describe you in a way that people can relate. Especially people that are like in our age group, or that are in in our, yeah, like maybe our age group, in our community of poets. But I see you as like the KRS-One of poetry, Chicano poetry, you know, where I used to listen to hip hop, and KRS-One always dropped the knowledge, and it was Black history, and you are to me more than a poet. You to me are a historian. You're somebody that can drop knowledge. You're an educator, and you do all that without all the titles, without all the schooling and stuff like that people like to talk about. You're like a grassroots, PhD chingon, and sometimes that's better. It's rare. You're a gem, dude. You're gold. You know, you're you're like a phenomena. And I think people need to realize that. Um, it's you just I was reading your book again today. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go over different things in the book and stuff, and I was like, man, it's like what it's like amazing. It's just amazing. And it's one of those things where I'm a reader, more than someone that listens to poetry. I'm more of a reader, and I'm reading it, and I can hear you, spitting out these verses and these poems, but I'm slowing it down as a reader. I'm reading it as if you didn't write it. I'm reading it as if it weren't Matt Sedillo, because I can hear you. So I'm changing it as I read it to just like something that I come across, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, man, this is just like, you gotta read this more than once. You've gotta read it, and say, man, this guy is well educated in what he's saying. He's not just talking shit. He's not just saying things to say it, but he knows what he's saying. And I'd be afraid to be the guy to challenge you on something like that, because it's just like, you got to be ready for a debate, and that's awesome. And that's awesome. Um so so I'm sorry. Hey guys, how are you? Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
So so we're gonna talk about your book, Mowing Leaves of Grass, and I want you to talk a little bit about the different things. When we were putting the book together, for me, important things were, of course, the book, the look, the size, the the way the fonts look and stuff like that, but I also wanted it to be something that was that you were happy with. And so when we came across this design by Matt Revert, it's obviously Walt Whitman. And I want you to explain to us, for those that don't know, who Walt Whitman was, why Mowing Leaves of Grass, so that when they pick up the book, they already know what they're opening up before they get into the poetry.
Well, in many ways, and I appreciate everything you said. Thank you. But so much of Mowing Leaves of Grass is kind of like it's kind of like my Chicano studies book, right? Like that one's really when we first started talking about a manuscript, I had a different manuscript. I don't remember, I think it was called Same Stretch of Sidewalk or something like that, and a lot of it was what would become Mowing Leaves of Grass, and some of it was poems I've held off for the next manuscript, which is going to be sitting on the second floor. And so I kind of separated them into two, right? One being the this kind of thing, and then this kind of Chicano studies kind of book for Mowing Leaves Grass, and the other one being more about a question of like space and geography and the way cities are laid out, right? So that was kind of more city on the second floor. And the reason I did that was because we're in the middle of a Trump presidency, we're in the middle of a historic psychic assault. Anyways, I mean, there's a lot of ongoing oppression that dates back forever, but a psychic assault on the community that's really kind of unprecedented, at least in my lifetime. And so like that was kind of like why I felt the necessity of Mowing Leaves of Grass, right? Now, some people would ask, like, well, if the book's about kind of the Trump era, why would you call it Mowing Leaves of Grass? Because in the kind of like liberal conception, Walt Whitman is not in league with Trump, and Walt Whitman is in fact the answer to Trump, right? So that's kind of like a white liberal mentality that the poetry of Walt Whitman, that the spirit of Walt Whitman represents all that's fantastic about America, and Trump is all that's horrible about America. So that's one way of looking at things. For me, Walt Whitman is a guy who wrote, on top of being a poet, he was a journalist, and he wrote in favor of the Mexican American War, and he was a big proponent of Manifest Destiny. So in my mind, I don't make these distinctions between Walt Whitman and Donald Trump. I just don't, right? I see that as assault on the community. I see that as assault on the community. He wrote a poem where he talked about California. I will teach you robust American love. He's writing this in the 1850s. That's a time period where people were getting lynched, people getting their heads chopped off, people were getting their heads chopped off and paraded around in museums. That's a horrible time for us. And he's talking about coming to California to teach us this robust American love. I mean, those are his words, right? So that's how I feel about Walt Whitman, and that's why the book's called Mowing Leaves of Grass. Now, do I think Walt Whitman was a talented poet? All these things like that? Sure, why not? But like the reality is that the poem is about this thrust of the browning of America, this changing, this demographic shift, and within the demographic shift, I believe that we need to fight for a narrative that is our own and needs to replace this kind of like Western canon that not only is it not for us, but it's written directly against us. In case of Walt Whitman, it's written directly against us. So Walt Whitman's talented, sure, but fuck him, I'm talented too. We don't need him. We don't need him. We don't need people. We don't need people who insult us, right? So we don't need to learn to develop our minds on the basis of somebody who insults us, right? We don't need to learn. We don't need to like sit at the feet of people who will step on us. You know what I mean? That's not what we don't need to be sitting at anybody's feet, but we definitely don't need to be sitting at the feet of people who mean us nothing but harm. So that is how I look at that. That is how I look at the legacy of Walt Whitman as somebody that was an enemy to the community. And so so that's why it was called Mowing Leaves of Grass. Because I don't make any distinction between Walt Whitman and Donald Trump.
Okay, so you made an important point there where you says uh, and I wanted to touch on that. When we say learn the language, people get upset. You know, and you know, why do you think people are so accepting to Walt Whitman, hold him at a high standard, and praise him? Even a contemporary Chicanx poets, give high praise to Walt Whitman. Especially, do you think it's because They don't know the history? Do you think they just kind of shy away from it, or they just it's been too long and it's forgiven, or they think he did enough for the art and for the poetry that it's accepted? Because what you said is one of those things where it's like it shouldn't be okay,
Yeah,
you know. But what do you think of those that are even now that do write, for the rights of the Chicanx or the Chicano, and Latinx writers, but still accept certain, writers of the past as someone that they use as reference, or it's okay to use as reference, I guess, when you're learning the craft, but put them in one of those I owe my poetry to, you know Walt Whitman,
yeah,
or
yeah.
because of Walt Whitman's poem, I became a poet. You know, what do you say to that?
Well, I think that I can't, I don't remember the exact full quote, but he said something to what is miserable, inefficient Mexico to do with the great mission of people in the New World, the noble race, right? That's a direct quote. That's a direct quote in favor of Manifest Destiny, in favor of the Mexican American War. What is miserable, inefficient Mexico to do with the grand mission of people in the New World, the noble race? He later wrote about California, teaching robust American love. Mowing leaves of grass itself, much of it is just an ode to like westward expansion. So like that's kind of like that, we have to really understand that. I don't think people really understand that. In the same way that we really don't understand our history in general, right? Generally speaking, we do not understand our history. We do not understand, specifically, I'm talking right now about the Chicano community. We do not understand our history. We do not understand how fundamental our history is to this country. You know what I'm saying? Everybody knows they have the right to remain silent. Everybody knows they have the right to attorney, right? Everybody knows of something called the Miranda rights. Nobody knows who Nelson Miranda was, right? That was a Mexican dude they were hemming up, right? That's
Yeah.
Ernesto Miranda. The other big one is Escobedo versus Illinois. That one happened 2 years earlier, right? Everyone knows they have the right to an attorney. That came out of Escobedo versus Illinois. Nobody knows Danny Escobedo. You know what I'm saying? So we are fundamental to the history of this country, not just to us, but to everyone, and we don't know that. In the city of Los Angeles, every time there's an action or something to do, everyone gathers at Pershing Square. Nobody even knows to demand the name change of Pershing Square on the basis of things this man did. This man led an expedition to Mexico, slaughtering people in the villages, right? It's called the Mexican Expedition, also called the Punitive Expedition. So this man was a killer. This man went to Mexico, so supposedly hunting for Pancho Villa, never finds him, just kills a bunch of innocent people, and then goes back home, right? And so, but we meet in this to protest war, right? And we don't even think to change the name. We don't even think to demand the name be changed, right? So we don't know our history. And so we read Walt Whitman. We're like, oh, these are beautiful words. They're put together beautifully. Oh my God, this guy had such a great spirit, right? And maybe he did, but there's this other element. And you know what? Like he's not the only person to ever have a great spirit. Don't read him. Read Juan Felipe Herrera. Read Leonardo de Cervantes. Read somebody else. Don't read him. We don't need him. We don't need people who insult us. That's how I feel.
And it's one of those things too where, I get tired of I've gone several times to bookstores, and I'll stand by the poetry section, and people will come up to it, and they'll talk to each other, and they'll say, "Oh, have you read this? Oh, have you read that?" And it's always the Edgar Allan Poe, and it's always, right, you're right, Walt Whitman, but it's one of those things where they never mention any of the contemporary poets. They never mention anyone that's alive and going. And how do we get them to switch? How do we get them to start reading those that are saying things right now that are actually becoming the next wave, the future, Edgar Allan Poe, the next, poets to reference. I know that what I've said is, hey, how come? Why don't you pick up a local poet? So you can see what they're writing about, and you might be able to relate more to them because they're writing about what's going on now than all the other stuff. But I think it's more romanticizing when they pick up E. Cummings or Sylvia Plath or the dead poets of the past, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. I read them too, you know, but
glamorize the ones that are alive too.
but let's talk about those that are doing the writing right now, you
Yeah.
know. And sometimes what I think, you know, this is what happened to me was I didn't know there were poets. You
Mhm.
know, I know there's a lot of poetry now because I'm doing it. But you talk to people, you know, regular people out on the street and stuff, and you ask them, do you know any poets in your community? And they probably don't.
Mhm.
How do we, you know, how do we get those voices out there? You
Yeah.
know, we feel like they are out there because we're doing all this. And you know, I mean, if you've had probably 100 or more interviews of people that are alive writing poetry, you
Yeah.
know, and I bet somebody off the street probably won't know any of them. How do we get them to know 10% of them? You know, that would make a huge difference. That would make a huge difference, and it would help them, you know, sell books. It would help them get into the schools. It would help them, you know, with their craft and not, it would sustain them. How do we sustain the actual writing and working poet of the day, and you know, so that people won't, you know, look for them once they're gone.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think we need to like move. There's a couple things, right? One, I mean, the first quick answer would be like hard work and talent. I mean, like you got to work hard. You got to work hard. You got to demand of yourself. You got to produce things that are, like highly developed for one reason or another, right? I'm not saying they all have to be highly developed in the same way, but they all have to be highly developed. You have to pour hours and hours and hours into what you're doing, right? And it has to sing a certain kind of way. It doesn't all have to sound like me. It doesn't all have to sound like you. It doesn't have to sound like anybody else. But whatever it is, it's got to sound like it is intentional, it is developed, it is different, and it is badass, right? That's what we have to do first and foremost. Next, I think we need to move through history as a unit or as a group or as a movement, right? You think of the Harlem Renaissance, you think of the Mexican muralist movement, you think of the Lost Generation, you think of the Beats, you think of any of those things. That's kind of what has to happen. Also, there have to be key figures that make things happen where others won't. I mean, I know that sounds hierarchical or whatever. We're supposed to be against that, but I don't know any other way, right? So, like, if you look at like Lawrence Ferlinghetti, right? Maybe not everyone else had his business sense. Maybe not everybody else had his hustle, his drive, his ability to get press, his ability to get exposure, right? But somebody needs to do that. Somebody in the group needs to do that for everyone to be remembered. That's just the way it is, right? So that kind of component has to be there. And I think what happens is oftentimes people think, well, if I promote other people, it's going to come at my expense. Nonsense. Lawrence Ferlinghetti is in no way, shape, or form diminished. His reputation as a poet is in no way, shape, or form diminished because he has promoted himself so well because he spent time promoting other people. You know what I'm saying? Lawrence Ferlinghetti is not seen as a lesser poet because he made Bukowski famous. Lawrence Ferlinghetti is not seen as a lesser poet because he made Allen Ginsberg famous. Lawrence Ferlinghetti is seen as a poet in his own right, as his own thing, as a great poet, master of the 20th century, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, on the basis of his own work. So it didn't take anything away from him to be a part of something, and it didn't even take away from him to do the heavy lifting. You know what I'm saying? He is still a part of that. He is still given his due credit. He's still given his due. So people need to get out of the mentality of being so hoardish and selfish and just being real, just like hoarding what's theirs and not working with others and not promoting others and not doing it. They need to get out of that. And we need to move together. And like, in its history, who will decide who gets to be the most prized name, who gets to be the Diego Rivera versus being Siqueiros, who gets to be Langston Hughes versus Claude McKay, who gets to be the biggest name or the biggest entry in the book. That's not for anyone in this generation to decide. That'll be decided 50, 100 years from now. You know what I'm saying? So like, and if you want to be the biggest name, do the hardest work. I mean, that'll give you the best chance. You know what I mean? That's the way it is. And see, and me personally, another thing in our community, this is a real problem in our community, is we're given to way too much false modesty. Way too much false modesty. We're always putting ourselves down. We're always saying, "Oh, not me." Oh, and it's usually a game because we're not really. Most of us who like work this hard and put ourselves, we're not really modest. We're just pretending to be because it's like some kind of weird cultural hangup, right? So we need to stop that too. Like, you know what I'm saying? When you gave me all those compliments, say, oh, I'm reading this so badass. It's like, oh my God, it's like a historian. It's like this, it's like that. I'm not going to contradict you. I'm not going to say, oh, no, that's not true. Because, of course, it's true. I've spoken at over 100 campuses. I've spoken at Cambridge. I've spoken at Casa Las Americas. Of course. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I thank you for recognizing it. I appreciate you for saying those things. You know what I'm saying? And I mean that from my heart. I really appreciate that. But I'm not going to deny it either. You know what I'm saying? I have goals, and I have goals. I have goals that depend upon other goals. You know what I'm saying? I need to achieve these goals to achieve those goals. So I'm not going to achieve those goals that are independent upon these goals by denying I've achieved this goal. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? It started somewhere, it's going somewhere, and I'm at this part of the journey, right? And the journey keeps going. But if I spend my time talking about, no, that's not true about me. Don't say that about me. Say that about someone else. Say that about something else. No, don't put me in that category. Don't put me in that league. It's going to slow that whole process down. You know, we have to accept that we are as smart and as brilliant and as ingenious as any other group of people on earth. You know what I mean? That we have that talent in us. We have that talent as a community and as individuals within that community. So we need to stop that as well. We need to embrace these things. We need to embrace just how brilliant we are. You know what I mean? And I know my work. I know what my work is. I mean, like, because I know the amount of research I put into it, and I know the techniques I employ, and I know the demands I make of myself. So I know how good it is, and I know why it's good. You know what I mean? And I know why. I know it sounds good because it's structured a certain way, and I'm very conscious of the amount of syllables I'm using. Right? I'm constantly shaving syllables. I'm constantly like, okay, I need 2 or 3 more words there. I need this and there. So that's why it sounds a certain way. But I know how it reads. I mean, I know what the content is because I pack that content in, and I make references to things. I don't say them directly. I make references moving the orders of the words around. You know what I'm saying? I make references to these things, and I don't make references just like say, oh, the Ludlow massacre. No, I say the Elvira Valdez, the youngest victim of the Ludlow massacre. I say things inside the information. You know what I'm saying? I say things within the text, not just the text. You know what I'm saying? The blade of El Pachuco guarding the temple steps. What's that? Oh, that's Zutsu, right? The scene where the blade, where he comes back down as an Aztec warrior and he's protecting the temple steps. You know, but like that, I don't just say Zutsu. I say the blade of El Pachuco guarding the temple steps, right? And then we're there, and then next, we're on to something else. We're on to something else. So like that kind of like rapid fire change up, right? That's my style, and I've highly developed it. And so I know that I'm good, and I know why I'm good. You know, so I appreciate you saying it, but we have to have we have to develop that attitude of knowing that we're good and knowing why we're good, of knowing that we're excellent and knowing why we're excellent, and developing ourselves as excellent. You know what I'm saying? And making demands of ourselves as writers. If we want people to talk about us years from now, and not just our friends who are going to give us unconditional support, you know, we want people who don't even know us to be like, that was great, right? Then we're going to have to make some demands of ourselves.
Right. Now, I was born and raised in Boyle Heights, and my heart is in Los Angeles. I've been in Texas for 20 years, and so um, I've teamed up with you when it comes to Flower Song Press and the whole publishing part of it. And we've teamed up into where I say, hey man, I want you to look out for those poets because you're there with them in California. And I'm not, I don't have everybody on Facebook. I don't have everybody on social media. I'm not out there listening to their poetry. Not everybody's putting it out there, but I know that there's some amazing voices out there and that who they are and stuff like that. Now tell me, what is your advice to that, young, up and coming, that novice poet that wants to get in on the publishing side of it? What is your advice to someone that wants to be a part of becoming heard? Let's just say, okay, put publishing aside, but how do you get them to that point? I think it's important that we develop. I mean, as a manager of a restaurant, my goal is to train and develop staff members to make sure that they start from one point and get to a certain point to where it makes my life easier. It makes my job easier. To me, that's the mentality in publishing. It's to get them from one point to another point to where it makes our voice is better and louder and heard, where they start at a point and then they end up in classrooms, where they end up in LA Times reviews, and in New York Times, in NPR, in lists, for people to read. um, how do we get them to get to that? How do we let them down when we have to, with a tenderness that makes them still want to say, hey, he did it with respect, and I'm going to keep doing it, and I'm going to come back to him. Because as a publisher, it's very difficult sometimes to tell somebody, especially for me, to tell somebody that's brown, to tell them, I'm sorry, I'm not going to publish you. I can't. You're not the right fit for us right now. Keep trying, come back later. It's difficult. To me sometimes. It's like, it's sometimes it's just like you don't want to break a heart, and you don't want somebody to feel like they're not good enough when really they're probably at the cusp. But you want to also not be so easy to please for the good, for the greater good of everything. You know what I mean? So what's your advice to somebody who comes to you? Hey man, how can I be down? How can I get published? Or what did you do? Because you and I have been in it a long time, and we know it hasn't been easy, and we know that it's a hustle. you know what's your advice to that poet that comes up to you, that's got his street stories, his barrio stories, he's got everything that will make a wonderful and great story that needs to be heard, that can relate, because to me it's like, when I was in school, there was no books for me to read that I could relate to, that I could say, man, that's my life. Man, that's my life right there. I can relate to that. Oh, wow. Somebody wrote a book. I could write that book. I've lived the same life. Not until I was out of high school that I came across Always Running, that I said, oh, wow, there's, somebody writing, books about us, and then I realized there were other books out there about, not just about that, but books about the struggle of coming over into this country. There was Rain of Gold, and there was, all these other books, and then there was poetry, and what do you think?
I think that there's two questions, right? Do I write well, and is what I'm writing about important? And if those two things can come together, then you are one of the greatest writers that ever lived, because that's all writing is, right? Is talking about things that matter and writing about them well, right? And writing about them in dynamic fashions. There's like that leave an impression, and I remember it after I read it, right? So you could come to me and tell me a sad story, but if you're just kind of going all over the place and you're just like, all over the place, I'll be like, oh man, that poor man, right? But if you come to me and tell me a story that's really sad and it's really well crafted, I'm immediately going to start thinking not only about what you're saying, but about a similar experience I had that was also sad in the way that your story is sad, right? And that's because you will be expressing it well. That's because that's great writing. Because I'm not even just thinking about you. Now I'm thinking about me too, right? Now you're giving me an experience, and it's forcing me in my own mind, right? So that's the first thing. Is like, is this socially significant, and is it well expressed? And if you can do those both, if you can accomplish those both things, that's great. Like some people, they get very frustrated because they say, well, what I'm talking about is so important, matters so well. But it's like, okay, well, are you like really investing the time to really organize your thoughts? Are you really investing time to say this in a dynamic fashion, right? Are you really putting this in a way that's going to be understandable to the reader and to the public, and people like read it and like, oh my God. And I don't mean like to white people or to somebody outside, or no, I mean like to anybody. It's like, would people in your own community, would your neighbor understand what the hell you were saying, right? Would anybody know what you were saying? If you, I mean, are you just like, like just exasperated? You know what I mean? Like, is this a really, is this expressed well? That's one thing. Another thing I would say is that if you really, really want to like really, if you're serious, this is only for like people who are serious. If you're really serious, and you're not just like writing as therapy, not writing therapeutic, not just trying to feel better and get it off your chest, which is very important. Everyone should do it. Everyone should do that. But if you're really serious and you want to take this to a different level, then what you need to do is develop a style and turn that style into discipline, and then turn that discipline into a standard of excellence that you hold yourself to every time, so that you are excellent in the way that you are excellent, no one else, and no one else. And in that way, you can never be discredited. You can never have somebody tell you this is not good enough, because you're not attempting to be a junior version of them. You're not attempting to be a bootleg version of them. You're not attempting to be something similar to what they're doing, and therefore and you're failing to do it. No, you are you. You are you, and you are great at being you, right? Sharpen your ability to be yourself, and in that way you're bringing something new into the world. I mean, it's just everything about it is just wonderful. You know, it's everything. There's nothing there's nothing that can go wrong when you develop a style, turn that style into discipline, and make that discipline a standard of excellence that you hold yourself to. It speaks to many things. Um, and the last thing I would say is that you have to understand something, that everything in this world, everything in the universe, perhaps, is a question of production and distribution, right? Are you producing your art? Is it at this like great level that you're satisfied with? How are you distributing it? Because many people are very good at getting things out, right? But then they don't really work hard on the actual craft of itself, right? And so what is happening is there's an initial like interest and boost because everyone's just responding to excitement. But then after a while, the word of mouth isn't really there because the work is not that you're bad. It's that you didn't really try. I mean, you didn't pour hours into this thing. You know what I mean? You didn't really actually give an effort. You just kind of like jumbled right out of your mind, right? And so it's not that you're a bad writer. So we don't know if you're a good writer or not because you didn't really write. You didn't really try. You know. Then the second part is a question of a distribution. So some people spend all their time in the basement of the lab, in the wherever, by the brook, by the river, wherever they get their creativity juices flowing, and then they don't focus on distribution, and they're just like, I'm so good and nobody knows it. I got these beautiful words, and then they develop like they go to certain places. Everyone's like, oh my god, this person's amazing, but they don't connect themselves to the veins and the rivers and the streams that would get their work out, right? And then they
Those
get
are excuse my language, man, but those are the pussy poets.
maybe.
It's the truth. They're writing for the wrong reasons, and it's not. It might work for some. It might work for a little while, but does it really work for you and for your soul?
Yeah.
Are you a true poet? Are you a true crafter of it, or are you just looking to get something out of it? You know, um, it's not, and it's easy to spot. For me, it is.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, a lot of opportunists, a lot of people just writing for like some quick turn, just some quick like attention, and yeah. I mean, that's true. That's true. But
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 let's
the people are really serious about like wanting their work to be widely read, and they're really serious about like leaving an impact, and they're really serious about participating in something that existed before them and that will exist after them. If they're
right.
really serious about like saying like I was alive in these years, and in these years people wrote, and I was one of them, right? Read the impressions I gave you from this chunk of humanity, right? From this time period, from this group of people. Um, then there's some real like there's some technical questions that they're really gonna have to address that are kind of boring, or they're kind of like demanding. They're not fun. They're not romantic. Um, but like that's what it takes. You know what I mean? That's what it takes. I interviewed somebody who was talking about having studied a Yiddish poet, right? I told him the only Yiddish poet I know is Isaac Singer, right? And he told me, well, that's because Isaac Singer did this, and this, and this, right? So it wasn't that Isaac Singer was any better than the other Yiddish poets. I mean, he was good, he was really good, but he wasn't any better than the other ones. But he hustled. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
And that's why he's the one that everyone remembers.
yeah.
I don't read Yiddish. I don't know. I never read Isaac Singer, but I know of Isaac Singer, and I know of Isaac Singer because he was the one who did those technical, boring things to stamp his name in history. It's true.
Right. And we've talked about this, I think, a few times where we talk about how we need to be, we need to we need to feel like we're leaving an imprint. We need to feel like our work matters, and we need to feel like we're doing something important. And not wait for history to give us that stamp of approval. You know what I mean? I think that we can, enjoy being that while we're alive, and create and nurture and be part of something that, you know, um, that we can, afterwards leave and say, hey, I enjoyed being a poet. I enjoyed, doing this. I enjoyed, being able to create this way. I know that my work was important, and I saw it with my own eyes. It's okay to do that. I want, that's the thing. I think people need to see that. And I think you understand that too, where, you know, um, where we can't just let history approve it, because we know what history has done to us and to our people. They've xed us out. So we need to make it the now. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
We can't let history or other people or whoever's in charge of learning and teaching in the future decide whether what we did or what we're doing is important. But we need to make it important to us and to our community and to people that are alive right now and reading, so that they keep it in their libraries and pass it down to their future generations. You know, I wish I had those in my bookshelf. Those that were now that I'm seeking and I'm digging up and that are out of print. You know, um, we need to bring those back. We need to let people know that they were there. They're not just something that happened and we missed the boat. You know, we need to bring those voices, front and center for our kids, for the kids right now that need to have that, someone they can relate to. Because I couldn't relate to Shakespeare. I couldn't relate to Steinbeck. I couldn't relate to, Hemingway. I couldn't relate to them. I needed, you know, people of color, and they weren't there. At least they weren't accessible to me, you know, and we've got to make that happen. That's why, you've got the guys over here in Houston, Tony Diaz and Lupe, the Libro Traficantes. They're doing some important work too, and they're all over, in California too. They're doing important things. Poets Against Walls down here in the Rio Grande Valley too, but we need to also be a part of that, and also, um, say yes. Maybe, I'm not, part of the group, but I support you in any way, shape or form. you know I know it's important work, and I think sometimes pride, I think sometimes in our culture, if we're not included directly, we don't want to be a part of something because we get left out. Or hey, if I'm not in it, was I'm not on board. We've got to quit that mentality. We need to dismantle it and say, hey, you've been traveling hundreds of miles on this train, and I've heard about it. I'm gonna jump on it right here at this stop and join you. And what can I do from here until I get off? And why do we do that? Why do you think in our culture, we let that happen.
Well, it's kind of funny because I spent so much time in the world of just broad kind of leftist politics, not just like specifically Chicano movement stuff, like just broad. And everywhere I heard this, you know, you know, Arabs, only we Arabs, we're the only group of people that don't support each other. We as black folks, we're the only group of people who don't support each other. We as this don't. So I think this idea that like of not supporting one another is very, very common, and I don't think it's unique to us, right? But I'm going to speak to specifically. So I do think that like this idea of like we're not supporting each other is very, very common. And we look at other communities, think that they support each other, and this one supports each other, and this one supports each other. But then we find out that there's a lot of like petty beefs and jealousies that exist there, just as here. And then you see a lot of support that exists there, just as here. So just as here, there's a great support line, a great chain line, a great group of mentors and people who are willing to help you up and people who are willing to take you on and willing to invest in you and give you knowledge and be that person to you. Like for instance, me, I've been really very, very blessed and fortunate and all kinds of other words to work with Luis Rodriguez. I mean, like, my God, I've had that opportunity, right? Wow, and it's been amazing. It's amazing. He's great. It's fantastic. And so I don't really experience that with him. I've had the opportunity, to in this interview process, I've had an interview of getting so much knowledge and wisdom from so many people. I mean, just the other day, I think I had Norma Cantu and Luis Alfaro back to back. You know what I mean? Like, so, it's just flooding my mind, right? So that's been that, and they were generous with they were both generous with their time, and they're both giving so much knowledge, into both my ears, right? It was, and what an experience that was. So I think that there is a lot of support in our community. There's also backbiting in our community. That's humanity. You know what I mean? Like that's the way people are. Some people are generous. Hey,
I walk by with the bread. I'm gonna make the kid sandwiches. We're over here at the beach. And they won't let us go into any of the meeting rooms or anything. So we're sharing a room to have a meeting. But I'm done with my meeting. So I'm going to make the girl sandwiches and go back to the pool. You guys are interesting. I'm listening to your conversation. And that makes a lot of sense, really, because it's like, that's really good advice that you gave about, seeking, is a writer meant to just share it as therapy for themselves? Because writing is a good therapy for a lot of people. It's like swimming is a good therapy for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You could be a professional swimmer.
That's right.
And swim and swim and swim and learn all these different strokes and win trophies and represent, your country, represent like whatever, right?
Yeah.
And be an amazing swimmer. Or you could go swimming for yourself and use it for therapy too. So,
right.
Swimming is good for everybody. So is writing. Writing is good for everybody too. It's just, choosing whether your writing is good for therapy or your writing is good to maybe reach out to other people and help them relate, to what's going on in your mind. Because a lot of people can relate to other writers and go, okay, now I'm not alone, and now I get it, because they have good points, and I get it. It clicks, So anyway, I'll shut up now because this isn't my interview.
No, but that's exactly right. Like, that's exactly right. Like swimming is good physical therapy. Writing is good therapy, and I don't want to ever just sound like I'm discouraging people from doing these things, right?
Yeah.
But the question is like, well, what do you want to do? I mean, if we really want to be like writers, and we really want to be like, I'm a writer, and like, look at my writing, and like, what do you think about my writing? Like, do you think I'm this?
And
right?
I think that the other thing that I wanted to add from like you all's topic before that about the dead poets and the live poets is that I think that a lot of live poets are, the years that you spend alive, you're spending them just writing all this stuff and doing all the work. But things are going to change too, because now you guys have social media, and dead poets didn't have that. They didn't have social media. They were living in the times where, you guys are doing this now and you're like meeting, your minds are connecting, and you're in California and he's over here at the island in Texas, beach bumming it, but you guys are still meeting minds even from all those thousands of miles away. And it's not, through snail mail, it's through, it's interesting because he's working with poets right now that, were from 30, 40 years ago who are working it hard. And some of them do things differently, they connect differently. They don't connect through social media. They connect through U.S. mail, like Alurista.
Yeah.
Yeah. Snail mail.
Snail mail.
That's a thing.
From
the
here,
pigeon sends
from
the
here
manuscript.
to Tijuana.
The pigeon brought the manuscript over to Edward. Now Edward back with it. Bye, Matt.
It's good seeing you.
You too.
Okay. So let's get into the book, Mowing Leaves of Grass, and let's get a poem going. This is a short poem, and I want to see if you could read it for us. Pedagogy of the Oppressor. It's one of my favorite poems in the book. I said that right? Did I pronounce that right?
Pedagogy of the Oppressor, yeah.
Pedagogy of the Oppressor. I read that poem today, and I was like, man, it's like it's a short poem, and it's super powerful. And you've got a lot of long poems in this book. You've got some 5-pagers. I think The Devil is a 5-pager, and I want you to read that one too. But let's read us that one, the Pedagogy of the Oppressor, and then talk to us about it.
All right. And when they read in conquest, and when they thought of process, and when they wrote again and again, it was the word progress, and when they spoke, a festival of bayonets impaled the audience. Line the children. It's getting late November. Teach them Pilgrim. Teach them Indian. Speak of gratitude. Speak of friendship. And so that was really about, like, the prominence of just how many racist teachers there really are. I mean, like, it's really bad. The situation, particularly, I mean, I can't speak to the rest of the country, but the situation in Southern California, Los Angeles specifically, is really bad because we have a growing population out here of brown kids, and we don't have a growing population of brown teachers. I mean, it's not really, those numbers are not compatible, right? And so we have a situation where you have all these old white racist teachers, not all of them, but like the majority of them, who are very abusive to the kids, and who see the purpose of public education, of the public education of Mexicans or and Central American kids, to be thought that they're not smart, to be taught that they're suitable for for what's called unskilled labor, which is a whole other thing that needs to be done away with, the concept of unskilled labor. But they get a substandard education because they are destined in the minds of the teachers for substandard wages, and because of that, they get abused terribly, right? So that's where pedagogy of the oppressor kind of came from. It came from this idea, that we're teaching these brown kids, that they're inferior, right? And so that's why I came up with it. And obviously, it's a nod to the book Pedagogy of the Oppressed, right? So I thought, well, what is the pedagogy of the oppressor? Like, let's ask that question. How do they think? So it's like, okay, when they think, when they write, when they teach, when they speak, right? And so I was like, okay, when that, and so it's like that, and that's how I structured it.
Great, awesome. Now, The Devil. Before you read it, and it reminds me of C.S. Lewis's this is a poem, but it reminds me of C.S. Lewis's take on the Screw Tape Letters. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
But you're writing as if you're the devil, right?
Yeah.
So I know that when I read the Screw Tape Letters, and then I read about how he said it was one of the hardest things he ever wrote, because he had just converted to Christianity, and then he was putting himself in the position of a demon to write letters.
Yeah.
As a demon. He's trying to ruin the life of a Christian. So hear your writing as the devil, and it's for me it's just straight up. I understand it when I read it. It reminds me of some songs that I some Ice Cube music. Um, so tell me what influenced you to write that, and just tell us more about the devil, and then read it.
Well, there's this phrase called "the devil out by his name" or something like that, right? And that phrase is in my head, right? Call the devil by his name, and like that kind of was like, okay, okay. I had that phrase in my mind, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna make the devil. I'm gonna write a poem called "The Devil." I'm gonna make the devil a capitalist, right? And so then that was the first thing on my mind. And then when I structured it, it began by talking about the very beginning. It began talking about uh, kind of just like business, like commerce. And the next part was going to be religion, and the last part was going to be about the government, right? But then it made a much smoother transition to make the religion, like organized religion, politicized religion, put that at the end, right? And then put the other one, because I'm transitioning out. I'm like, I'm the mark of the beast, all this kind of stuff. So I'm like, okay, so that should go in the end, and then the government will go in the middle. So I had to like move that around. And the interesting part of that is that that's kind of usually for me. I'm like, oh, this poem isn't done. This poem isn't done. Anytime I feel this poem isn't done, what it usually means is that the poem is in the wrong order. You know what I mean? Almost like 95% of the time, something is wrong with this poem. And what that means is something is happening too soon or too late. Almost always. Almost always. So let's see. You see, I heard it said somewhere there was a sucker born every minute. Not sure provide service. Get them on their way. Get them custom fitted. And they say it's like stealing candy from baby. It's more like selling crack to a fiend. Bieber to a tween. A winning Nigerian lottery ticket to a fool. Tom Cruise to a desperate housewife for Scientology. To Tom Cruise. Yes, you see, there's a sucker born every minute. I'm still letting those got some options. Coca, Pepsi, Ford or Nike, Adidas or Chevy. wait. Ford or Chevy, Adidas or Nike, a Mac or PC, a college education versus mortgage. Get them knee deep in the blood of the Congolese, an Indonesian sweaters, good old fashioned American debt. Don't want the way to do business? Go ahead then. Organize, occupy, protest, start a boycott, hire a PR firm, reorganize my sweatshop, restructure a loan, then auction you at a house and home. I'm the American way. I am your raised flag. Now pledge allegiance. And they say it's like stealing candy from baby, but it's more like stealing an election, starting a war on a false pretense, giving the contracts to my friends and reviewing my stock options. I am the cross-section of business and politics. I'm a Washington lobbyist. I'm Fred Thompson, Jack Abramoff, Dick Cheney. You best pay me. I'm the reason why you can't fight City Hall, but I can buy off a Supreme Court justice for the faint-hearted or those born of weak stomach. I am corruption, but for those bold enough to call the devil out by his name, I answer to capitalism, and I run shit. And I heard there was a sucker born every minute. I'm sure to provide a service, give them something to believe in. So I'm that Opie the masses. I'm that Christian Zionist. Pick your pocket being I'm getting pocketing percentages and the rest of the IDF to gun down some Palestinians. I am organized religion, a scandal brewing the Vatican, a Wahhabist on the payroll of a Saudi prince, a Hindu nationalist calling for ethnic cleansing and purification. I am Pat fucking Robertson, all up in your airwaves calling for political assassination. I am a holy man, a man of the cloth, and I wrap myself in holy garbs. Watch the blood from my hands, watch the money roll in. I am a businessman. I am the poor you shall always have. I am what Caesar takes when you are willing to give it. I'm the divine right of kings. I'm he who shall not work, shall not eat. We're not hiring, go, die. I am every side of every coin. I am feudalism. I am slavery. I am the free market. I am the 1%. I am capitalism. And I will watch your children starve to satisfy my greed. I am the mark of the beast. And I ride on war, famine, genocide, and the bottom line, I am the motherfucking devil. And I run shit. The fuck you gonna do about it?
That's I love that poem, man, because it's like a train, and it's like full speed at the end, and it's about to hit something, and it's about to wreck, and it's the devil, wrecking lives. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's got a lot of passion, and I love it. But I want you to say motherfucking when it comes to that, like con ganas, bro. Like it's. Yeah. It's one of that poem is so powerful, and it's let me tell you about that poem too. That poem read slowly is just as powerful for the reader, because the reader's not going to read it like you. They're not going to have that passion. They're not going to have that know-how the way you do. So I read it slowly, and I'm like, fuck. It's like, shit. What just slapped me in the face? You know what? I just hit something just like, pow. You know, and then I hear you read it, and it's like, it's like magnified. You know, so you know that's amazing, and it's I really love that poem, and I know a lot of people do. I know a lot of people, you know, do. A lot of people do like it. I've heard it several times where people say that's my favorite. You know, I think somebody in the comments, well, Karina, you know, that the devil is one of her favorites, but I've heard that in the past.
It reads well and it performs well.
Yeah, I've heard. I think like it's one of those where like he's gonna sing my favorite song. You know, like I came to see my favorite band, and here's my song. So it's one of those. You know, it's like one of your signature poems, I think. You know, but there's a lot of them in the book that are like that are powerful. How do you feel after reading that poem?
I mean, I feel good. I mean, I feel good that I wrote it. I feel good. I feel. I mean, the interesting thing about the devil, it's a persona poem, right? So it's like obviously those are not my politics. I mean, but it's like Luis Valdez wrote about like these actos he would do, the political actos, and one of the concepts of the actos was to delegitimize the enemy, to mock the enemy, to satirize the enemy, right? To make them look foolish, right? And so this isn't necessarily satirizing, but it's so over the top, it's so explicit, it's so whatever that like if you're like some guy that's just like, oh, I'm a libertarian, right? Like you're gonna look really stupid after hearing the devil, right? You're gonna like, I believe in capitalism, right? That poem is really just like, this is what we're talking about here. This is what we're really talking about, right? I'm gonna watch your children starve to satisfy my greed. Like that's what we're talking about. And so like to really embody that, to full-throatedly just be like that, I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's like playing a character. It's like putting on a mask. It's like, like it's, what I mean? It's like Halloween or something like that. It's like,
that would be a great poem if we could get it into some kind of like YouTube cartoonish, maybe not cartoon, but I'll get back to you on that. I'm trying to think of the right words for that. Sort of like what do you call that? Like when they do those shorts, like a short film.
Yeah.
Something like that. That would be amazing, dude.
There is one.
That would be amazing. We need to talk about that. We need to get to that. One. Yeah.
There's one already on the devil.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I'll send it to you. It's
good.
By Elefante. Yeah. They had the same idea. They had the same idea when it came out. So
send me all that. Send me all that.
Yeah.
So, where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in El Sereno and then Maywood, and I was born in El Sereno and my parents got divorced, and so I grew up in Maywood and El Sereno in my early days, and then bounced around. I've lived in the burbs. I've lived in like Dallas. I've lived in the little sleepy town Dime Bar. I've lived in Winter Park. I've lived in Dallas. Cool. Place. But I always like when people ask me where I grew up or where I was born, I usually say El Sereno. I mean, the reality is actually it was El Sereno and Maywood.
Cool. Where do you see your poetry in 5 years?
In 5 years, I'm looking towards the idea of I mean, like I really see. I mean, it all depends. It depends, like if I'm able to accomplish certain goals. I think I see in 5 years. I see having published another one, and I see I've probably published in 5 years. I see 2 more books at least, maybe 3. If I can really, if everything works out, fine. And by that point, I mean, it's just a question of amount of production and it just being really good, and if it meets the standard and they're all coming out, and the flower song grows like I think it will. I see myself, I'm like within like 2 years. I set this goal for myself to be widely recognized by the age of 40 at the as the best political poet in America. And so like, that was kind of my goal. And I don't know. I got investigative journalist Greg Powell saying I'm the best political poet in America. I got a historian, Paul Ortiz, saying I'm the poet laureate of struggle. So I mean, like, I got like these people who are not necessarily poets, who are involved in the broader struggle for a better world, talking about my poetry and about why it's so important and why it matters. And to me, that's kind of in a way more significant to me than like the Academy of da 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 da, right? Because you know, I mean, I'd like recognition for my artistry and my craft and the things I do, But that's like, to me, that's like some technical, that's like some technical, like, kind of, I mean, I don't get it, I don't really care. But like, but the respect of people who are political poets. I'm not discounting any poets, but people who are involved in the world of politics, who are involved in political struggle. The respect of them, whether they're poets, whether they're teachers, whether they're journalists, whether they're historians, whether they're community organizers, whatever they're doing, whatever field, the respect of that group of people, way more important to me than the respect of other scribblers. Which does not mean I don't take scribbling seriously. Which does not mean I don't take writing seriously. I take it very seriously. I take craft very seriously. I take knowing why I edit the way I do very, very seriously. I take it as serious as anybody. But having the respect of other people who are like, yes, you said that very well, is less important to me than having the respect of people who are involved in the struggle for a better world.
Good. Awesome. Tell me, is there brown on brown crime in literature?
I think there's a lot of hating. I mean, generally speaking, I think there's a lot of hating. I think people hate on one another way too much, and the thing that happens when you hate is that what you end up doing is you're not like, it's one thing to like compete. It's one thing to compete, and when you compete, you win or you lose, and whatever. I mean, you want to be competitive, but like, to hate is you start discounting other people's talents and qualities and abilities, right? And when you start doing that, that's not right to do to the person, right? Because they work very hard to do whatever they're doing, and you're also cheating yourself because you're now starting to talk about like, well, this is only because this, and that's only because of that, and this is only because of this, and this is only because of that, and the only reason is this, and the only reason is that, and this is only because, and that's just because of this, and da da da. When you start doing that, then it becomes a question. Then you start like putting yourself in a position where you're not going to improve, and you're not going to demand it yourself, and you're not going to challenge yourself. And the minute you stop challenging yourself is the minute you stop growing. You stop growing, you're going to get left behind. So hating is not only destructive to the party you're hating on, it's also destructive to yourself. And there's way too much of that. Way too much of that.
Right. I agree. I agree with that. And it's unfortunate because there's so many ways. That's just literature. But if you take it to the streets, it becomes a life or death situation. Growing up in the projects and growing up in El Sereno for you're familiar with that. And so for me, it's like it's a different type of crime that's committed. When I look at it, to what I grew up seeing, where if you do something like that, it's a life or death thing. And then in literature, it's bad too, in a different way, but it's just as disheartening and even uh, life altering.
Yeah.
It can destroy you for a long time if there's that hatred, because you're suppressing, another writer, or you're making other people believe that there's something wrong with that other writer or that writer.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie where when I say that there's some people that I rather not associate with, but if they're good writers, I buy their books, and I read it, because I am the learning poet at all times. I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to know, or see what people are thinking, because if I read your poetry, I'm not just reading your poetry. I'm reading the poetry that you've been reading because you are influenced by whatever you've read. So I'm cheating myself by being that hater. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can't afford to do that to myself by doing that. So maybe I won't associate with someone because of something, but I will still respect the craft so that it can, grow because it's a healing thing, and maybe that strife between two people isn't the greater good for what it can do for you know a number of other people. So when you destroy someone who's writing and they stop doing what they're doing, or they feel like, I'm just gonna give up because whatever, then you're not just destroying them, but you're taking away a healing element that could have done something for someone that you never knew, but that they did know. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where it's beyond comprehension to a lot of people, but people need to start thinking beyond just themselves and start thinking, okay, what are my actions going to do
Yeah.
to everything? You know
Everything.
what I mean? And so it's one of those things where it's gotta stop, because then there's no growth, there's more hatred, and people love tragedy. And people love, I mean, you watch the news, and I always say this, and I say this all the time. When you watch the news, people want to see tragedy, people want to see death, people want to see planes crashing, people want to see know about that. That's why they tune in all the time. They want to see tragedy. They don't want to see, they want to see darkness. They don't want to see a fireman, saving an old lady from a nursing home that's on fire. They want to see, some, car chases down the 405, you know, but I mean, what makes the most money though? Blockbuster films where there's explosions and all of that is what makes the money. But those love films don't make the millions of dollars, not as much. No, they don't. You know, and so what I'm saying is, that I kind of lost my train of thought there. No, you don't. And so um so
People are
I
crazy.
lost where I was going
They
with
want, they
that.
want, they want to see a car crash.
Okay.
People want to see a car crash, is what you're saying.
People want to see that.
Yeah,
People want to see some people do want to see a car crash, an explosion, and they do want to see that last minute rescue, but they do want to see that shit was destroyed in the process. You know what I mean? They want to do that. So
and find out
um,
many books Daniel Steele has
but
written and sold.
but yeah, Marta's like, listen to the woman. Hey, I'm all for it, and believe me, when you're gonna have to stay for the ending of this interview because it ends on that. Anyway, um, okay, let's talk about, okay, Trump is Trump. We know
Okay.
what he is, right? We know what we get, right? Let's talk a little bit about, you know, before Trump, because we want to talk about too, about we like to talk about things that are just easy. It's easy to pick on Trump because he's that stupid and he's an asshole and he's that, evil, and he's doing everything that's awful, right? But kids haven't been in cages recently. And I think it's only fair that we talk about that because they are our brown kids. They're our color. They are from Central America. They're from South America. They're from, Mexico. They're from, our countries, and they're coming here and they're having a hard time. Yes, they're having a harder time now, but they were always being held, and shit wasn't being done in Arizona, during the Obama administration. We had the stuff going on in Arizona, and all that stuff was going on, and all the detention centers were going on, and all that stuff. People say we miss Obama. They miss him because they don't have it as bad as they had it now with Trump, right? Mm-hmm. Now I'm not saying I'm pro Trump, because if anyone knows me, they know I don't like the son of a bitch, and but we've gotta call people out on their shit, right? And we've got to be truthful, and we can't let shit slide, right? So what happened before Trump came into office that led to what's going on now, that shouldn't have been going on, that just made it greater?
Yeah. The United States happened. The United States. I mean, it's a whole history of this. I mean, we're talking about that. I mean, talking about Obama. I mean, you're talking about the Obama years. I mean, talking about, you mentioned, the camps in Arizona. I mean, those were it was a smaller scale, because there was less people, but it was just as brutal. It was just as horrible, just putting people in that same kind of confinement. And I remember reading at the time, I can't remember his name, but there was this guy from Homeland Security. He was an official from, quote unquote, Homeland Security. And he went down to these detention camps, and he said something in the effect of, we keep hearing about these children being locked up. But when I went there, I saw, young men as old as 16 who look more like a threat to the United States of America, right? So that's a kind of genocidal language of, like, the fact that, like, you're a 16-year-old boy and one day you'll grow to be a man, and that's a threat to me, right? That kind of, like, genocidal kind of language was being deployed in those years. I mean, that was happening, right? And so that's kind of something that that's something that was going on. I mean, and like before, you have this horrible, Trump is this terrible guy, right? But there's a bureaucracy to this, right? And the guy that's head of ICE is this guy Thomas Homan. Thomas Homan, he's a cruel, bastard who's handling the day-to-day. He's the day-to-day overseer of all this stuff, right? That guy wasn't appointed by Trump; he was appointed by Obama, right? And so that's Obama, right? And before that, if you look at Bill Clinton built the first wall, during Operation Gatekeeper, simultaneously passed NAFTA, knew that was going to drive up Mexican migration, and so he built a wall in San Diego. So there already is a wall, and at least from Baja California, and that was built by Bill Clinton. So this is really important to know. This is really, really important information, that this is the Donald Trump is not the beginning and end of all the problems. Like, Donald Trump everything was great, and Donald Trump showed up, and oh my God, it got horrible, and then once he's gone, it'll be better. That's not the case. So, well, I mean, like, I wrote so much about Trump because it was a moment. It's this moment. It's a terrible moment, and I don't ever want to deny just how terrible it is. And I hope that it getting this terrible will wake people up to what the general condition is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is like heated up too much that you won't take it anymore, because
right.
we've been taking it for a long time. And so I hope that this. I mean, I wouldn't want this to happen. Be like, aha! Now finally, great. Now someone turned up the heat, so now we're going to do something. No, I don't think like that. But since it is happening, hopefully that will at least come out of it.
Right. And I brought it up more for the history lesson of it, so that, people do know. But with Trump in office, it's brought up to light a little. It's gotten where it's blatant, where it's out in the open, where it's like, we really don't like you motherfuckers, whereas before it was, well, yeah, we have this going on, we're trying to, secure borders and this and that. And that's fine, because it wasn't just Obama, but all the people around him, and the pressure of being a president, and this guy doesn't care what anyone says. He's not listening to advisors. He's doing what he wants. That's what it sounds like. And so it's just, straight up, my way or the highway, and whereas I think other presidents, or, might have gotten some, maybe misinformation, maybe, hey, we need to do it this way, or else it's going to be worse, and so this guy's more like, I don't care, lock him up, shit, screw that, wave the Confederate flag, those are good people, when really they're not, and so I brought it up more as a like a you know for people that don't know, because a lot of people will talk, but they don't really know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the Christian that talks and talks and talks about Jesus, but doesn't know anything about the Bible or the book. You know, and it's like they don't know their history on what they believe.
Yeah. Well, just so people understand, like ICE, right? Like ICE hasn't always been around. Like ICE was something that was started by George W. Bush, but grossly and greatly expanded by Barack Obama, right? And so it expanded under Obama, and is being carried out in its monstrous force, continued by Donald Trump. But this, like, this giant, like, network of just cages, that exist for undocumented, they exist for like migratory people, right? Was created under the Obama. I mean, it was technically created under Bush, but really, really, incredibly expanded under Obama. And so, like, there's which is not to say that, like, this is not a statement. This is not a pro-Republican statement. This is a statement that this is a duopoly. This is a machine, and it continues on and on and on and on. Now, this is just one question. I mean, we can go across the board, and we can see that, at really kind of the beginning of Reagan to now, there's always bad. I mean, there's always bad things happening. But from Reagan to now, we see the complete destruction of the public infrastructure, and we see the growth of prisons. We see explosion of personal debt. We see all these things happening because it's the president's job to do whatever the wealthiest people in the country want them to do, right? Whether they're Democrats or Republicans. So they're going along with this preset program, right? And the difference between the parties is largely rhetorical. Like, one group of people will say, I hate you. Go get them. We hate them. Another group of people will say, like, there's a problem with those people, and we need to fix them, and we need to help them out, and they need a helping hand so they can be good like us, right? And that's the difference between the two parties. You know what I mean? Like, one is a system of, like, talking about, like, we're deficient because, and it's not our fault that we're deficient, and we need help because we're deficient, but we are deficient. And some of us are criminals, and we got to lock them up, right? So that's the Democrats. The other one is like, they're deficient because they're just naturally deficient, and blah, 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 and we need to lock even more of them up, and we need to knock them up, and we need to not feel bad about locking them up. God damn it. And that's the Republicans, right? And that's the only difference. That's the difference between the two parties. It's all rhetorical, because the truth is, when Ronald Reagan comes to power, there's about 500,000 people in prison in the United States. By the time he leaves, there's about 1 million. By the time Bush Sr. leaves, there's about 1.5 million. By the time Bill Clinton leaves, there's like 2.5 million. And both Bush, Obama, and now Trump have all held steady. It goes between 2.5 million and 2.2 million. So this is kind of like the mark they want to keep it at for now. But the prison expanded. The prison is just one example. The prisons expanded under both these parties, exploded under both these parties. And you can look at the cost of college education. You can look at the explosion of personal debt. You can look at homelessness. Something like there was like less than 100,000 homeless at the beginning of Reagan, and it just keeps going up and up and up and up and up to the hundreds of thousands now, and it's like 1 million or something like that now, right? So all these things that would indicate that you're gonna die, all this, like, these politics of essentially welcome to the jungle. You know what I mean? Like, these are the politics of the Guns N' Roses song "Welcome to the Jungle" have expressed themselves in both parties, and it's an unbroken chain.
Right on. This is your book, Mowing Leaves of Grass. It's a real handsome picture of you back here. Some great blurbs. Tell me, if someone asks you, what's your book about, what would you tell them?
The Browning of America.
The Browning of America. What type of poetry book are you writing next?
The next book is about how cities are built against us. How the cities are built against the people who built them. The city is against you. Basically, it's you can say capitalism, but like capitalism takes place somewhere, right? And capitalism takes place in nation states, it takes place in whatever, but it also takes place at a smaller level in cities, right? And the entire infrastructure of the city is set up to rip money out of you, right? To rip your time and energy out of your body, convert that into something called money, and make someone else rich. And that's what the city is designed to do, right? And you participate in this. And this book is a book about your participation in your own exploitation. So that's what City on the Second Floor is all about.
Nice. Looking forward to that one, Matt. We're gonna wind down, and I just want to tell you that La Reina is one of my favorite poems today. The day after Mother's Day, it sings and places murals on my walls today. I hear my mother and my grandmother's voice today. I see my wife giving birth to my mija today. Is this your dear mama poem?
It's written to a lot of people, but yeah, like I would say mostly my mother. I mean, it's written to so many of the women of the community, and but it's not written in one of these ways where it's like I don't know, these ways that you're just lying and you're just like being dishonest. You'll be like, oh, I need to like worship you and da 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 da, and I need to learn about myself and challenge no, it's written in a way that's like very honest, just like this is true. Like this is the women are the backbone of the community, and it's about this woman, but it becomes seamless, like weaving back into the question of the community. It's like it's inseparable. Like this question of her struggle and the struggle of the community. It's totally inseparable. You know what I mean? And so that's why it's written the way it's written.
Can you read it for us?
Sure. Los Angeles abuelas who raise grandkids in Spanglish, and the watchful eye walk them off the Virgin Jesus. Make a village out of a duplex, raised Catholic, but the roots are indigenous. Several generations of family extension all growing one plot. Hand-me-down to the shared rules, rooms, and reflections. In la quech, porque mi casa es tu casa, and that's empty promises, family living. That's palabra. Let's light a candle. Burn some sage, pick your saints, set your altar, sign of the cross. The sound of the conch, prayers lift the four directions, that's culture, not contradiction. Folks in the back, they fight for a living. 515 hail from the rowdy section of Dodger Stadium, but their hearts still burn with the fire from the Chavez ravine, and here is home of La Reina. At 54 cents on the dollar, America's most exploited worker. Neglected, disrespected, underrepresented, presumed incompetent. If she lives life as expected, she'll be labeled statistic. If she managed to outpace them, threaten, they will blame affirmative action, but either way, they will not see her. They will demand her labor, paid and unpaid, smiling, her eyes humbled, her mouth silent. Lay the river. Cities past, present, and future. Queen of angels. Invisible to those who float. Through canyons, lagoons, and cemeteries, whitewashing adobe through a series of fevered dreams connected by a bridge called her back to those who make demands. The stories told to bury the past, the ones that serve to remind her that she works for them, that she is lucky to even have a job here in El Pueblo. Señora La Reina, Los Angeles, Rio por $5. That's called La La Land. 78 with the Pueblo. 89 is a brickyards of Montebello, built one again, only beaten and shot. Only for no Mexicans, no dogs, only for the rules, for instead of schools, only written out of the history of a city. We found as we are priced out of the homes of our mothers, yet more and more of greater Los Angeles suddenly discovered. This is a stroll of forebears. One para pan, historia eterna, victoria siempre. The struggle is real. La lucha sigue. La Reina Los Angeles on the front lines of every fight, holding it down, holding the better half of the sky, fighting, education, fighting for education, fighting for tenants' rights, fighting la migra y la jura, because police, chingala, ice, fighting for dignity, hers and ours, all the damn time, proud and brown and brown and proud of the hearts and heads, the backbone of these raised fists. When we throw two fingers up, when we say fuck Donald Trump, that's an identity pause, that's a cry of the proletariat. At 54 cents on the dollar, she is the face of us. When you see her, pushes some other months rolls, locked behind cash, registers my third, fourth, fifth, shift to the oppressed, show some respect, bow your head, bend the knee, all hail La Reina, the once and future queens.
Nice. Awesome. So tell me, that's an amazing poem, dude. So tell me, what do you miss the most right now that we're locked in, self quarantine, stuff like that? What do you miss the most about being a poet?
I miss getting around town and like doing shows and meeting new people and just kind of I miss that. I miss going around and selling books and being like in front of a bunch of people and the people who've never heard my work before, people who know my work, and like it and etc. I miss that. I miss that. People that I don't really know that well or I never met, but have heard of me or something like that. I miss doing that. But I'm also having a lot of fun with the interviews and talking to people online. So, and I'm getting a chance to talk to people who aren't in Los Angeles, who are like you in Texas, like many people all over the place. And so like I kind of like I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying having access to people I normally wouldn't, or normally. I guess I could call them, but like but I'm not. I'm enjoying being able to talk to people. I'm enjoying the fact that people are really bored right now and willing to talk to me. And so like I'm really excited about that. So I'm trying to emphasize what's good and what's better about the internet, and not just make it a sad imitation of my normal everyday life. Because sometimes I feel like people are doing things online that are just like, oh man, I wish I could hug you right now. I wish we were at the venue right now. I wish we could go out for drinks afterwards. Like all 10 of us just pour out of the venue and into the bar, and I missed missing all that camaraderie, right? That people get from the open mic scene. And so like that makes them sad, right? Well, I would rather do things that make you happy. Like, oh my God, why didn't we ever do this before? We had a reader from New York. We had one from San Francisco. We had one from Kansas City. We had one from, like, I'd rather do that kind of stuff, right? And so I've had the opportunity to do a lot of that kind of stuff, like bringing people from all over the country to do stuff. So that is something I've really enjoyed. So I don't know. I'm happy in that regard. So I'm trying to make the best of it, and I'm trying to like, I knew immediately when this happened and the shutdown was going on, and I started like losing all my college gigs, that I had to think fast. Like think fast, come up with something, think fast. Whoever thinks fast is gonna like be ahead of the game. So like this idea of like bringing people from all over the place and having open mics or whatever, that I kind of had the idea, but I didn't have the ability to execute it. But someone did, yeah. Right? So like so Asia Monet, she was able to organize all these people, and everyone was like, oh my God, look what Aja Monet is doing, right? Kai Coogan, she was able to organize these people from all over the place, and then was, oh my God, Kai, what I mean? So it's like whoever could think and stay ahead of the game and was in position to do something, they were celebrated, and rightly so. So like that was kind of that was where my mind was at. Like, okay, like, well, I need to stay ahead of the game. Like, I can't just be sitting here panicking. I need to
right.
Think. Like, and it's like I'm looking at the bomb. It's a time bomb. It's like 10, 9, 8, 7, and the explosion is my career. So I'm like, think, like, so like that was the position I was in, and I think these interviews were a good idea.
Yeah, man, and and I've been enjoying them, and I think you're doing a great job, and I hope that as soon as this is over, the gigs pick up for you, and you're able to go out there, and you made some good, contacts with the people you've interviewed, and those that do have that pull will invite you to their schools. Those that were professors will invite you to, go and perform at their universities and stuff like that, because it's you're there doing the hustle, and you don't just go in and just read, you really give them their money's worth, and they're gonna get a lot out of this, and a lot out of you, and I'm really happy that you're part of Flower Song Press. I'm really happy that we're working together and that we're communicating on a daily basis, and it's I think it's just good things are happening, great things are happening actually, and I'm glad that we have this partnership, and I'm happy for you and everything that you're doing and your success. Keep it up.
Yeah.
Hopefully, everyone buys your book.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. And like I normally sometimes I hide my hand a little bit about everything I'm doing, but I really appreciate all the trust you put in me in terms of developing a lot of stuff out here in California. So I really do appreciate that. Yeah, we're there's no way it's not gonna take off. I mean, like it's already like I don't think people realize just like how big a year Flower Song has already had, despite the COVID, like in the last like 3 or 4 months. I don't think people have really caught up to what's really going on at the press, and they're certainly not caught up to what's coming. So I mean, like this is like it's happening fast, and it's gonna take people a minute to adjust. But like, this is gonna be big. This is good. Flower Song is going to be big.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we went a little over. I don't know if we had a time limit, but yeah. Thanks for your time. I'm gonna get back to the familia here. We're here at South Padre Island in Texas, enjoying the beach for a while. Probably hit the pool for a little bit right now that there's not that many people there, and try to relax before I go back to being that essential worker.
What's up?
You know what I mean? Yeah, worry about some dinner. I know they've been waiting, but
We already ate real good.
oh shit, they ate
sandwiches, chips.
Oh, they already ate anyway.
Wow. Go have your chip stuffed sandwiches or whatever.
I know.
We might.
But yeah, man. Keep at it, and I'll keep watching and catching up, and say hello to Karina for me. Tell her thank you,
Karina.
thank you for that poster. Thank you for hooking it, for doing what you do. Appreciate you.
We love you.
Yeah, we hopefully you get to see each other soon when we head out to California.
Have a double date on Zoom.
A double Zoom date.
What, a double Zoom date? Okay, well, we could figure that out, I suppose.
Yeah. But yeah, man, take care, and we'll be in touch. And everyone can find your book, buy it at their local bookstore, at the Indie Press bookstore. But more importantly, they can find it at flowersongpress.com, and they can look at all the other members, all the other authors that are in that catalog. But go ahead and get that book. Get that book.
Get the book. Get the book.
All right, get the book.
Yeah, saying thanks, Edward, Liliana. So yeah, we will. We're gonna take you up on that Zoom double date. I think we will.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I got to go there first, but I think
we'll have some good conversations for sure.
All right. So peace out, man, and be well. I'm glad you got some rest. Now get on the horn and get those voices out there. Let us listen to the new.
I have another one at 8. I might take a 10-minute nap. So
do it. Get something to eat. Take care of yourself. Buy one of those donuts to sit on. Otherwise, your ass is gonna hurt.
All right. Thanks, man.
Good night.
Bye.
Night.